engine running.
Out of what I accomplished in my life, it wasn't quite enough. I never could find this sense of well-being and peace in my life. At the same time, I was having a very difficult time in my marriage and a very difficult time with my children.
Now, I walked all over the world. I walked on other worlds without a knowledge of God. But it was not enough. The walk on the moon did not change my life. The walk with Jesus has changed my life.
Well, I'm thrilled today on this Father's Day weekend to have a chance to talk with General Charlie Duke, a United States astronaut and one of 4 men still alive who walked on the moon. It's great to have you with us, General Duke.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's good to talk to you after high ground, and we're looking forward to the interview. So happy Father's Day to everybody.
Some of you may know a bit about General Duke. He is most famous for being a lunar module pilot on Apollo 16 back in 1972. At that point, he became the 10th and the youngest, and remains the youngest person to ever walk on the moon. Before that, he had an impressive career. He graduated from the Naval Academy. He was a fighter pilot. He was a test pilot. He did a master's degree at MIT. And then he was accepted into the 5th cohort of NASA astronauts. In light of that, he was friends with Chuck Yeager and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and James Lovell and Deke Slayton and all of those others. After walking on the moon, General Duke returned to the military for a number of years, then he retired. He had a successful stint in business and has spent much of the last 50 years talking about his experiences all over the world. At this moment, Charlie is the Texan of the Year, which in some circles is probably a higher honor than walking on the moon. Not in Illinois, but it's something to note. Just a few weeks ago, he was also in the news a lot as the SpaceX was launching. So I met Charlie and his delightful wife Dottie at High Ground, a men's retreat and ski trip, and immediately I thought, I've got to figure out a way to get the 2 of them to Christchurch, and we agreed on that. And then we had all kinds of plans for them to speak and to be at all kinds of different events, and they were going to get to see their friends, the Lovells. It was all set up, and then COVID hit, and so we're doing an interview instead, but I'm thrilled to have this opportunity. So, Charlie, before you landed on the moon, you were the voice of mission control for the first people to land and walk on the moon, the Apollo 13 mission. And that was, there were some tense moments there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, actually, it's Apollo 11. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the crew. And I was Capcom during the landing. And it was high drama, if you will. We started our descent and we had communication problems, so we had to reorient the spacecraft. Then we had computer overloads that I thought was going to scrub the mission or the descent, but our flight controllers said we're go on those alarms, so we continued on down. Then towards the end, as Neil began to see the surface, we had him targeted into a big crater, boulder field, big crater with boulders. And so he had to overfly that, which left minimum fuel. And now we're getting down to, I called 30 seconds, and that meant he had 30 seconds to be on the ground. I heard Buzz Aldrin say, contact, engine stop, and we knew they were on the ground. A few seconds later, Neil said, Houston, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. And I was so excited I couldn't even pronounce Tranquility. But I did finally get out, Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. We were literally holding our breath. Were they going to make it before we had to call on abort? So that's the story. And it was a great thrill for me to be part of that historic mission.
Obviously. And then a few years later with Apollo 16, I'll see if I can get it right, get my Apollo missions correct. You had a chance to go. And I suppose much of the world have sort of wondered what that would be like. I was curious as to what it was like to actually take off. And I read about that in your book, Moonwalker. And you said that if you wanted to know what it was like to sit on top of Saturn V when it's burning 4,500 pounds of jet fuel a second, and what you're thinking about, you said you were just thinking about worrying about falling out of your chair because the thing was shaking so much. Can you tell us about that?
The Saturn was the biggest rocket ever launched. It was 363 feet tall, 33 feet in diameter, weighed 6.5 million pounds. We had 5 engines pushing us off the launch pad. 4 of them were gimbals, so they would move to control the trajectory. And as that movement came up the launch, up the rocket stack, if you will, to our spacecraft, it was the vibration was intense from side to side. And I said, there's something wrong with this machine, but John Young said, we're go, and Mission Control said we were go, and I began to relax. It was just the way it was supposed to shake. After the first stage, which was 2 minutes and 40 seconds, it dropped off, and the second stage ignited, and then from then on, it was just smooth as glass as we went into orbit. So the first couple of minutes got your attention. Unfortunately, you can't see outside in Apollo at this point because the windows are covered over with a boost protective cover. So you're just looking at your instrument panel, and you're shaking, and it's shaking, and everything in there is shaking. But we shook our way into second stage, and then after that, it was smooth, as I said. It was a great ride.
So in reading your book, I've heard it said that there's more computing power in our iPhones today than in NASA at the time of Apollo. And reading your book, it made it sound like there were just a lot of close calls, and that some have said NASA had no business going to the moon in the 60s and 70s. Were you surprised when you look back? Were you surprised that you guys made it and made it back?
No, not really. We had a lot of confidence in those spacecraft. They were built by the lowest bidder, but they weren't cheap. And we had the leading edge technology to get us there. And we had a great team. Mission Control was able to overcome a lot of problems that we had. The Mission Control computers required a whole floor. They were huge. But the onboard computers were 80K memory in the command module and in the lunar module. Well, my cell phone now has 800,000 times that memory. So it's incredible. And then I'll see now with the flat screen displays that SpaceX, the Dragon spacecraft has, it's really Star Wars stuff to me compared to what we had. But we had a lot of confidence. The probability we were going to make it was high, very high.
Okay. Well, what was the best part about being an astronaut? So it sounds like you had a lot of fun on the moon, the lunar rover, and the views and all of that. I'm guessing that the highlight of your career was walking on the moon. Is that the best part of being an astronaut?
Well, in my case, yeah, it was. The landing on the moon was really dramatic, and I'd say then we landed and we were ecstatic. We had landed 6 hours behind schedule, and so It was when we finally got there, I was so excited. And then we had our first moonwalk, and that was a tremendous experience, being out on the surface of the moon. We had 3 excursions. The moon was beautiful. It was incredibly dramatic, exciting, wonder. But as Buzz Aldrin said, it was magnificent desolation. So that was the problems that we had, but we got over it, and we just enjoyed our 3 days on the moon. It was spectacular.
So talk for a second about the Lunar Olympics. You set out to set a record for the highest standing leap, and that sort of didn't work.
Yeah, we had we were going to do something at the end of our stay. Alan Shepard on Apollo 14, he'd hit a golf ball. Dave Scott did a hammer and a feather trick, Newtonian physics. So we were going to do the Moon Olympics, and but we were running behind, and Mission Control was pushing us on to get back inside. But John started to bounce, my commander, and I started to bounce. And when I jumped for the record of the high jump on the moon, I've straightened up, and when I did, the backpack took me over backwards. And so I'm falling backwards onto my backpack. And if that thing breaks, I'm dead. So fortunately, I was able to roll right and break my fall. And my heart's pounding as I'm on my back on the moon. And John comes over and says, "That wasn't very smart, Charlie." I had to agree with him. That wasn't very smart. And then he helped me up. And the TV camera was pointed right at me, so they had seen this from Mission Control. They were very upset. So that one event ended the Moon Olympics, and we still have the high jump record for the lunar surface.
Okay. Well, so let me pivot here. So I asked you what the best experience of being an astronaut was. What was the worst part of being an astronaut?
Well, I think I don't think there was any worse part, but there were hard parts. And the hard parts to me were the training. It was very repetitious, and we did it over and over and over again. Unfortunately, we lived in Houston, but the training was all in Florida. And so that was the problem. Was you were gone from your family 5 days a week, and that went on for 2 years. So that was probably the hardest part of being an astronaut, being separated from your family so much. It took a heavy toll on my family.
Well, I've read and I've heard you talk about the fact that when you got back from the moon, you were a little lost. You'd been to the moon. That's the highest thing that was going to happen. You weren't going to get to go back. You had global fame, but you didn't really have a sense of peace. Can you explain what was going on those years?
Well, after Apollo was over in January 73, all of us had basically 12 of us had walked on the moon. And I was 37 years old. I was actually 36 when I was on the moon. But at 37, after Apollo was over, the thought hit me, what are you going to do now with the rest of your life? How do you top a trip to the moon? So I had no peace in my life. I was searching for the next adventure, searching for the next opportunity. I stayed at NASA for 3 years until 1976, working on Space Shuttle, but it was a long way off. And the Space Shuttle in those days was just basically meetings and drawings and getting built. And so there was no real dynamic training. So I decided to leave NASA in early 76 to become a businessman. And I thought that was going to be my answer. From moon to money, you get enough money, you're going to have peace. And so that was the start of a change. As I said earlier, we had real problems in our marriage. And by 1975, in October, my wife was basically on the verge of suicide. She didn't have any relationship with God, really. We were in church, but nothing was real. It was just going to church. And some people came to our church and shared their story about the reality of Jesus, and he is the Prince of Peace, and he can change your life. And so after that weekend in October 1975, she gave her heart to Jesus, and I watched her change, not overnight, but within several months. I was married to a different woman. I was really pleased with that because things changed at home, but I was still focused on this business career, if you will.
I've heard you talk, and I only bring it up because I've heard you talk about it, that you were drinking too much at the time. Was that something that sort of trying to fill the gap?
Well, I think it was just a habit I had. I was when I went into business, I was a Coors beer distributor. So I did do a lot of beer drinking, but I don't think that had the effect on my lostness, if you will. Drinking helps you feel happy and good. At least it affected me that way. But I still had no peace inside. And so, but I started seeing Dottie, and a couple of years, 2.5 years after she came to the Lord, friends of ours at church invited us to a Bible study. I had just sold the beer business in March of that year. And it was in April of 78. And at that Bible study, God got my attention, and it was a story, a revelation, of me, of who Jesus is. And I realized that we had an opportunity to either accept Jesus or reject Jesus. We have a free will. God's given us a free will, and we can choose to walk with him or we can choose to walk away with him. And Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to God except through me. So you can believe that or you can reject it. Well, after that weekend, I accepted it. And I said, come into my life, Lord. And when I did, I experienced the peace of God. And that peace has been with me now since 1978. And what I was really looking for was, the world can't give you peace, but Jesus can give you peace. And that's what I needed, was this relationship with God. And so that started changing our marriage, our life, our family, everything.
Yeah, I heard you talk about a reset with your boys. Since it's Father's Day, talk about how you sort of repositioned your relationship with them.
Well, I loved my boys. When I went to the moon, I was 5, and they were 5 and 7 and almost 5. And I had been a military drill instructor dad, and I was going to basically get these kids into shape and to be perfect like I was. So I was hard on them. I didn't have much love. I was involved in their lives, but it was, you got to do this, you got to do that. And so I was always, if they didn't, always on them. And if they didn't do exactly what I said, I would be on them with verbally. Tom, that's stupid. That's not the way to do it. So I was literally, they were becoming exactly what I spoke to them, as put downs, I guess. And God showed me that I had cursed my own sons. And by curses, I mean things like, you're stupid, you're dumb. You start, as a father says that, you're beginning to curse your son. And when God showed me that, I was in tears. And so I went to him and I apologized. And I said, God, boys, forgive me. And they both did. And we began to build our relationship. And I began to encourage the kids, to compliment the kids, bless the kids scripturally. And I watched them begin to blossom into fine young men. And they both gave us really no trouble in high school or college. They're now grown men, have given us 9 grandchildren, and it's been a blessed family, if you will. And so
that's a great Father's Day message and an encouragement. Is there? We're just about out of time. Is there something you want to say to fathers, or something you want to say to everybody? Maybe there's a life verse, or just a parting challenge of somebody who's been to the moon and lived a long, full life. Any send-off words for us?
Yeah, I think what I would like to say is walking on the moon was exciting. It lasted 3 days. But walking with Jesus lasts forever. And we can all walk with Jesus. And as a father, I know now that I'm to be a guide and a teacher, even to my grown sons. I see them looking to me. And so if for the fathers out there, pay attention to your kids, love your kids as Christ loved the kids. And if you don't have a real relationship with the Jesus, then get right with Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been great to have this brief opportunity to talk to you. We continue to hope we're going to get you up to Chicago, you and Dottie, and I know she has a wonderful story to share as well. So we're going to hope that happens, but thank you for spending time with us today. God's blessing on you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good to be with you all, and happy Father's Day, everyone.